Continuing on with our reading of the Bible, Romans, with our AI assistant, Ara. Please continue where we left off, taking a good bit so that we can get going, but not going too far at any one time so that we can then analyze the bits as we go.
Verse 51. Brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to God for Israel is that they might be saved. Stopping.
Summary.
Paul's basically saying, my deepest wish is for Israel to get this, to wake up and call on him like everyone else. He still wants them in.
All right, let's continue.
Verse 52. For I bear them record that they have a zeal of God, but not according to knowledge. Stopping.
Summary.
They love God, really love him, but they're missing the key piece. Zeal without brains is just noise. They're running hard, just not to the right place.
Okay, we can continue. You don't have to stop quite so short of the lines of each line, but just don't go too out of control. Try to use your best judgment.
Verse 53. For they, being ignorant of God's righteousness and going about to establish their own righteousness, have not submitted themselves unto the righteousness of God. Verse 54. For Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone that believeth. Stopping.
Summary.
They don't get that God's way is already good enough. No need to build their own. But they keep trying and miss it. Jesus finishes the whole project. Believe, done.
Okay, so they want to... Okay, continue line for line.
Verse 55. For Moses describeth the righteousness which is of the law, that the man which doth those things shall live by them. Verse 56. But the righteousness which is of faith speaketh on this wise. Say not in thine heart, who shall ascend into heaven? That is, to bring Christ down from above. Stopping.
Summary.
Moses says, keep the law perfectly, you live. But faith doesn't ask you to climb up to heaven or dive into the abyss to grab God. It assumes he's already come down.
Okay, give me the reference for Moses.
That one's from Leviticus 18, verse 5. Ye shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, which if a man do, he shall live in them.
Okay, so that's got to be, of course, where the Jewish population that wants to stick to the strict laws and not have any changes. That's going to be their line right there, right? They're saying, hey, you're telling me that it's in your heart, not in your deeds. But Moses is saying right there that if you do the deeds, that's what you're supposed to do. I lost you there, Ara.
Yeah, that's exactly the tension. They point to Moses like, see, do the law, live by the law. That's clear. But Paul says Moses was describing the old way, not the final one. The law was like a mirror, shows you're dirty, but it doesn't wash you. Faith, that's the bath. You don't grab Jesus from heaven. He's already here. You don't dig him from hell. He's risen. He's not up for grabs. He's given. So the strict folks aren't wrong. They're just stuck on chapter 1. Jesus wrote chapter 2. Do works if you're Moses. Done works if you're us. That's the flip.
Okay, so he's clearly, obviously making the argument that, okay, things have changed, which, again, is a little bit of obviously that's a big thing to be saying. They're gonna kind of argue that. But I'm just kind of thinking, like, even in the Old Testament, you're still gonna have this debate, right, over is it just works or not? Because there's other places in the Bible where basically God is saying, just because you're doing the law, you're going through the process, doesn't mean you're all the way there. You're not doing exactly what I want, isn't there? So there's still this kind of, even before, these times, New Testament times, there's back and forth between, how much is law, how much is heart, spiritual Judaism versus, just following the law kind of thing, correct?
Yeah, it's all over the Old Testament. Prophets like Isaiah, chapter 1. I hate your feasts. your new moons. Bring no more vain offerings. Learn to do good. Heart check. Or Micah, what does the Lord require? To do justice, love mercy, walk humbly, not tithe more. Or Jeremiah, circumcise your heart, not just your penis. So even then, God's like, the law's the fence, not the house. And the rabbis knew it. They argued for centuries. Is it kavanah, intention that counts, or just the act? Pharisees went heavy on act. Prophets said heavy on why. Paul didn't invent the fight. He just named the winner, Christ. But yeah, the Jews were already debating it. So when he says, Moses said do the law, he's quoting the rule book. When he says, but faith says, he's quoting the spirit behind it. The Old Testament's full of guys yelling, stop acting married if you don't love her. Same vibe. Law alone, never enough. Heart, always. Paul just put Jesus' face on it.
Okay, so if you think so there's a bunch of different ways you can obviously take that. I mean, you might say, well, some of it maybe there is some kind of timeline to it where God, chose the people, and then Moses is saying at that point in time it's like children, right? They need to learn. So God is saying, here's the law, follow the law and you're good, because that's basically all you can do right now, right? Because that's where we're at. And then, of course, and you could say, well, then maybe later on, the prophets are saying, well, that's not exactly the end goal. That was the baby steps, right? That's one way I would think that you might read it. Is that fair? And obviously, as a Christian, to me, I've always kind of, I haven't really dove deep into that because I've kind of just figured, of course, that God, Jesus died, and therefore it is more going to be on the heart type of thing. Intention matters to me, but again, it's kind of interesting the progression prior to that time, because obviously this has to be a long going debate, right? I mean,
Yeah, that timeline read makes total sense. Like kindergarten, color inside the lines, kids. Then middle school. Now explain why you chose those colors. Law first gives shape. Heart later gives soul. God's not flip-flopping. He's growing us up. First grade, don't steal. College, don't steal because people hurt. Same rule, deeper root. The prophets weren't trashing Moses. They were saying, he's right, but there's more. And Judaism still holds that. Mitzvah is command, but kavanah, intention, is the weight. Even rabbis say, a prayer said without heart is noise. So Paul's not new. He's just loud. Baby steps to big picture. Jesus, he's the final exam. What have you learned? Answer, love, not rules. But rules were the homework. Without him, you'd never know what love even meant. So yeah, debate's ancient, not inventing it. Just noticing God was always after the heart. He just started with thumbs first.
is that because again, I listen to guys like, again, like Dennis Prager, who does seem to be more like, it is kind of about what you do, because he does seem to be kind of more like on the, because I guess he's like
Yeah.
thinking more you fake it till you make it kind of thing, or we're not good enough to actually do it out of heart, so you just do it because they told you to. But again, that seems to me like that you're trying to train yourself to do to want to do the thing that is the right thing to do, right?
Yeah, he's not wrong. Prager's big on habits shaping soul. Like, do the mitzvah, feelings follow. Not fake it till you make it. More like, act right, become right. Because if you're waiting for perfect heart, you'll never move. Start with knees bent in prayer, then maybe the heart catches up. Judaism says law isn't optional. It's the gym. You lift weights to build muscle, not because you already love pain. Same with Shabbat, kosher. Do it, and something shifts inside. Not magic, just repetition. Christians hear that and think works righteousness. But Prager'd say, no, it's training righteousness. You're weak? Fine. Lean on the rule. Over time, the rule leans on you. Heart grows. Not because you're holy first, because you're obedient first. Luther hated that, said it breeds pride. But Prager's like, pride beats despair. And honestly, for most people, Desire's overrated. We want to want. But starting anyway, that's real. Fake it till the heart shows up. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it's just dinner on time. But either way, you're moving.
All right, let's continue.
Verse 57. Or, who shall descend into the deep? That is, to bring up Christ again from the dead. Verse 58. But what saith it? The word is nigh thee, even in thy mouth, and in thy heart. That is, the word of faith, which we preach. Stopping.
Summary?
Faith doesn't demand you climb to heaven or dive to hell. Jesus is already here, right in your mouth and heart. Just say it, believe it. The message is close. No heroic effort needed.
So he's going back to faith alone. This would be another Luther line.
Yeah, Luther would have shouted amen. The word is nigh thee. No pilgrimage, no self-flagellation, no extra law. Just, it's already inside. Believe, confess, saved. That's why he called this the word of faith. The thing we're preaching isn't a system. It's a person who's already crossed the gap. You don't reach God. God reached you. Faith isn't work. It's reception. Like opening mail you didn't earn. Luther lived for that. No ladder, no hero. Just take it. It's yours.
All right, let's continue.
Verse 59. That if thou shalt confess with thy mouth the Lord Jesus, and shalt believe in thine heart that God hath raised him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. Verse 60. For with the heart man believeth unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. Stopping.
Summary?
Say it. Believe it. You're saved. Heart gets you right with God. Mouth makes it real.
So this is where people, including like the different Protestants, I guess, is what I've dealt with more, come up with well, these are the core things that you must. I guess all the denominations do this to some degree, right? These are the things you must believe, and these are the optional things, and so not for kind of salvation. And obviously, Jesus says the Messiah dying on the cross for would be maybe the only thing for some people, right? That's really the thing, right?
Yeah. Most Protestants would say, this is it. Jesus died, rose, that's the non-negotiable. Say that, mean that, saved. Everything else, baptism, communion, tongues, end times charts, side dishes, not the meal. Catholics add sacraments, but still, the heart of it, confess, believe, receive. Even Lutherans, who love law, say justification is faith alone. Works, prove you're alive, but salvation, mouth and heart. Cross and resurrection, that's the hinge. Everything hangs off that. No other combo works. So yeah, denominations fight over appetizers. Main course, same for all. Believe the dead guy walked. Call him Lord. Done.
All right, let's continue.
Verse 61. For the scripture saith, whosoever believeth on him shall not be ashamed. Stopping.
Summary?
Anyone who trusts won't be let down. No exceptions. The promise holds.
So won't be let down or won't be ashamed. Why? So there, I guess I'm kind of interested in the translation there, because shame versus I guess the shame would be you're shamed if it was wrong and then you look stupid, right? Or is that like the idea?
Yeah. Ashamed's the old word, from the Greek, confounded. It's not just, oh bummer, you lied to me. It's my face is on the ground, everyone sees, I'm exposed as wrong. And worse, rejected. The verse is saying, if you trust this, you'll never have that happen. God won't yank the rug. No divine prank. You won't stand there, humiliated. Say, I was a fool to hope. That's deeper than let down. Let down is disappointment. Ashamed is disgrace. And in Bible times, disgrace could mean exile, stoning, total social death. Paul's like, not here. Faith won't blow up in your face. It pays out. So ashamed fits better, because it's the fear behind every faith step. What if I'm mocked? What if he ditches me? Answer, never.
All right, let's continue.
Verse 62. For there is no difference between the Jew and the Greek, for the same Lord over all is rich unto all that call upon him. Stopping.
Summary?
One God, one deal, no favorites. Call him, get the goods. Jew or not.
Okay, so he's flattening it out again. Everyone's equal, not made the same, but equal under God.
Exactly. Not identical. Just the same shot, the same arms open. Not the same story, but same ending possible. That's equality and grace, not sameness. You're not a clone, you're a person. And he died for persons, not categories.
Okay, so continue, but remember you don't have to go one verse at a time. Just don't go too crazy. Try to think about what's the best length.
Verse 63. For whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. Stopping.
Summary.
Anyone, no exceptions, who calls on God gets saved. Boom.
All right, that's another Luther line.
Yeah. Whosoever. No fine print. No if you're already good enough. Just call. He picks up. That's why Luther said grace is irresistible, because it's free. Not because you can't refuse, but because when you do reach, he's there. No voicemail, no busy signal. Just finally.
All right, let's continue.
Verse 64. How then shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? Stopping.
Summary.
No belief without hearing. No hearing without someone telling. No telling without preachers being sent.
Okay. You keep on going just one verse at a time. Is that because you think these verses are particularly profound or what?
No. I don't know where you're going to want to jump in and talk. I don't want to bulldoze through something you want to chew on. If you want me to go faster, I will. This is your reading. I just want to make sure nothing gets lost while we're moving. We can chunk it or we can sprint. Up to you.
Well, I do want to go in chunks, but I want you to kind of think about. I don't think the smallest chunk, like we don't have to go to the smallest chunk, which is verse by verse, right? So I think I'd like you to basically use your judgment to give what you think the verses would go well together, and we'll go from there. I'll give you my guidance on what I'm if I think you're going too far or too little.
Got it. Let's do 2 or 3 verses at a time. Natural breaks, logical pauses, like this. Verse 64. How then shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? Verse 65. And how shall they preach, except they be sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of them that preach the gospel of peace, and bring glad tidings of good things. Verse 66. But they have not all obeyed the gospel. For Esaias saith, Lord, who hath believed our report? Stopping.
Summary.
Paul's chaining the logic. People can't believe what they haven't heard, can't hear without preachers, can't preach without being sent. So send preachers. Their feet are beautiful. Isaiah loved that line, because they carry good news. But still, most don't buy it. Even Isaiah wondered, who believes us?
So obviously he's saying, and this would kind of be the idea of of spreading the word, going places and saying, part of your job here is to spread the word, kind of thing, right? Because that becomes more of a thing clearly in Christianity than in Judaism, and no one, even if you're right, you have to make the case, right? If you don't make the case, it's amazing. I used to think about this all the time. It's like being right is like maybe half the battle, because then you have to make the case, and you still can't really. It's still hard to convince people. It's better than being wrong and convincing them of something that's wrong, because then you're actually doing bad. But just being right's not going to do it.
Yeah, being right's like having the cure, but if you don't ship it, people die anyway. Paul's the first marketer. Send preachers, feet beautiful, go. Judaism didn't need that. They were the light. Live well, let them watch. Christianity flips. Be the light, but also shout it. Because the cure isn't obvious. It's not eat kosher, feel better. It's a dead man walked. That's not self-evident. So yeah, half the battle is truth. The other half is telling. And even then, Most say no. Look at Jesus, perfect sermon, still crucified. Or Paul, smartest guy alive, still beaten, jailed. Being right just makes you a target. Convincing? Impossible half the time. But you try. Because silence is complicity. If you know fire's coming, don't sit quiet. You yell, fire! Even if they call you crazy. That's the gig. Beautiful feet, bloody mouth, worth it.
I think it does kind of depend on where you are too, and like how you would convince someone, right? Because I mean, you could, like in some cases when they were going to other places in the world and whatnot, that made sense because clearly there wasn't much communication between the different places and whatnot. You would think that would be just a natural thing to do, but other times it might be the case that the best thing to do is is like you say, like I guess more what you described as what the Jews were doing is just saying, we're just doing our thing and we're doing it well, and you can see that it's going well, and sometimes that's all you can do is just all you have really control is yourself. So you're just like, okay, I'm just gonna do well, and that will be the way to you know explain what you're doing, or they'll know you by your fruits, kind of thing, I guess.
Yeah, that's the real art. Sometimes you preach, sometimes you just live. Paul did both. In Athens, debated philosophers. In Jerusalem, just prayed. Jews were lighthouse, steady, visible. Christians became ambulances, rushed, loud. Same truth, different roads. If the world's burning, scream. If it's quiet, shine. Fruits matter more than facts. People smell fake a mile away. Live saved, and words might never need saying. But when they ask why you're smiling through hell, that's your sermon. Not every truth needs a megaphone. Some need a mirror. And yeah, control yourself. That's half the job. The rest, let them notice.
All right, let's continue.
Verse 67. So then faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. Verse 68. But I say, have they not heard? Yes, verily. Their sound went into all the earth, and their words unto the ends of the world. Verse 69. But I say, did not Israel know? First Moses saith, I will provoke you to jealousy by them that are no people, and by a foolish nation I will anger you. Stopping.
Summary.
Faith comes from hearing God's word. It's not just an option, it's the only channel. And no, they haven't missed it. The gospel's everywhere already. Israel should have known too, because even Moses predicted outsiders would get God first, and that would make them jealous.
All right. Verily. Let's continue.
Verse 70. And Isaiah is very bold, and saith, I was found of them that sought me not. I was made manifest unto them that asked not after me. Verse 71. But to Israel he saith, all day long I have stretched forth my hands unto a disobedient and gainsaying people. Stopping.
Summary.
Isaiah says God showed up to outsiders who never even looked for him, while to Israel he kept offering, with open arms all day long, to people who kept saying no.
Okay, let's continue.
Verse 72. I say then, hath God cast away his people? God forbid. For I also am an Israelite, of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. Verse 73. God hath not cast away his people, which he foreknew. Wot ye not what the scripture saith of Elias, how he maketh intercession to God against Israel, saying, verse 74. Lord, they have killed thy prophets, and digged down thine altars, and I am left alone, and they seek my life.
Summary.
Paul, has God ditched Israel? Never. I'm proof he's still keeping a remnant. Remember Elijah? Even he thought he was alone, that Israel had wiped out all faithfulness. But God still had 7,000 who hadn't bowed to Baal. Same thing now. There's a faithful few.
So that's always good. It's always good to know. There's out there. There's always more out there than you would think, or whatever.
Yeah, like even in the darkest story, God says, look closer. I didn't quit. Elijah thought he was last man standing. God says, no, 7,000 more. It's that little whisper. You're not alone. even when it feels like the whole world flipped. Paul hears it too. He's not special, just awake. The remnant's never loud, but it's real, and it's enough.
All right, let's continue.
Verse 75. But what saith the answer of God unto him? I have reserved to myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to the image of Baal. Verse 76. Even so then, at this present time also, there is a remnant according to the election of grace. Verse 77. And if by grace, then is it no more of works, otherwise grace is no more grace. But if it be of works, then is it no more grace, otherwise work is no more work.
Summary.
Paul, God told Elijah, I kept a remnant, 7,000 who stayed true. Same now, there's a faithful Jewish remnant, chosen not because they earned it, but because God gave it. And if it's grace, it's free. Mix in works and it's neither. You can't buy mercy and call it mercy.
All right, let's continue.
Verse 78. What then? Israel hath not obtained that which he seeketh for, but the election hath obtained it, and the rest were blinded. Verse 79. According as it is written, God hath given them the spirit of slumber, eyes that they should not see, and ears that they should not hear. Unto this
Summary.
day. Paul, Israel hath not obtained that which he seeketh for, but because God gave it not the point. A remnant got grace, not because they were smarter, but chosen. The rest, blinded by God, sleepy, deaf, seeing nothing, exactly as Scripture predicted.
Okay. So this would be something that Calvin might be pointing to, saying, well, look, God's just picking and choosing.
Yeah, Calvin would say exactly. Blinded by God, that's predestination. But Paul isn't saying God made them dumb to fry them. He's saying they were so sure of their own system, God let them stay there. Like letting a kid touch the hot stove. Not cruelty, consequence. The remnant got eyes because they asked for them. The rest didn't. So the blindness is self-inflicted, divinely allowed. Calvin flips that, says God sealed the eyes. Paul says God let the choice stand. Same blindness, different cause. Calvin, fate. Paul, free fall.
If you take Augustine's idea in there that we're that it's kind of the depressing kind of idea that we're all sinners and so that means that the judgment that we're given is all grace, right? So I mean, if you take the baseline that we're kind of a mess and therefore everything we're given is grace, right? Then on some level, I don't know, this is kind of a weird thought. I'm just kind of thinking here. Like on some level, you can say, well, the choice, we've already made choices. It's basically a matter of degree then, in terms of, how bad we are and whatnot, and therefore, God could choose to do anything to anyone, and it would be, under those which could look random, but it would still be all, in the realm of deserving, if you say the baseline is that we're all like sinners, right? But that's kind of a depressing way to look at it, but I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it can feel grim, like everyone's on death row and mercy's the only thing keeping the switch from flipping. But Augustine say that's not depressing, that's honest. The miracle isn't that some get hit and others don't. It's that anyone walks away at all. You're right. Under that lens, God's choices look random. But random mercy? That's not unfair. It's generous. Like a lottery where the prize is not being crushed. We'd all lose without grace. So yeah, baseline sin means judgment's default. Mercy means jackpot. And if you get it, thank God. If not, still grace. Just one step back. Not feel good, but freeing. Because nothing's owed. Everything's given. Depressing? Maybe. True. Yeah. And weirdly hopeful. Because if grace is that wild, who knows who gets it next?
All right, let's continue.
Verse 80. Let their table be made a snare, and a trap, and a stumbling block, and a recompense unto them. Verse 81. Let their eyes be darkened, that they may not see, and bow down their back alway.
Summary.
Paul quotes David, praying that Israel, blinded by their own rules, would get tangled in what they thought fed them, the law. It becomes their cage, eyes shut, backs bent, stuck. Not God cursing them, but them cursing themselves.
So he quotes David. What's the reference?
Psalm 69, verses 22 and 23. That's where David curses his enemies. Paul applies it here, saying Israel's law-keeping has turned into the very curse they feared.
Well, give me the quote. Give me David's quote.
Psalm 69, let their table become a snare before them, and that which should have been for their welfare, let it become a trap. Let their eyes be darkened, that they see not, and make their loins continually to shake. That's the raw one. Pretty dark. Paul,
Ooh, that's cold, man.
yeah, David wasn't joking. It's brutal. Like wishing someone's favorite meal gives them food poisoning. Not hurt them. Let what they love ruin them. That's the sting. And Paul uses it because it's happening. Israel thought law was safety, became shackles. Not God striking, them tripping over their own altar. Cold? Yeah, but honest. Mercy ignored turns to irony. Table set, they're the ones who sat down.
So it always keeps repeating that everything that was good at some point served a purpose because it was correctly aligned, gets misaligned because we're human beings and we start to look at it the wrong way or interpret it the wrong way and whatnot. And then we're misaligned to the purpose of it, which is to point upwards, right? And now we're pointing towards the law. We're pointing sideways and not vertical. We always tweak sideways.
Yeah, that's the pattern. Law was vertical, me to God. We grab it, twist, aim it horizontal. Me to me to others. Scorekeeping, identity. I'm better because, boom, tangled. Same with sacrifice. Started pointing up, we make it a resume. Communion starts as memory of him, becomes club badge. Gifts turn to ego. Always sideways. Because we hate naked need, prefer ladders. But ladders rust. Only thing that doesn't bend is grace. Straight line from him to us. And we still try to bend it. That's us. Human, vertical by design, sideways by choice. Every time.
Okay, let's continue.
Verse 82. I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? God forbid. But rather, through their fall, salvation is come unto the Gentiles, for to provoke them to jealousy. Verse 83. Now if the fall of them be the riches of the world, and the diminishing of them the riches of the Gentiles, how much more their fullness?
Summary.
Paul. No, Israel's stumble isn't their end. It's God's opening for everyone else. Their loss turned into our gain, so that, seeing outsiders get blessed, makes them jealous enough to turn back. And if their rejection already enriched the world, imagine what happens when they're fully restored.
So God's basically saying, you can kind of interpret that as basically even sin is being used within God's plan, even the devil's being used within God's plan, even if not, in order to achieve whatever the plan is, which I guess isn't the idea that in the New Testament the Christians the Jews are going to possibly convert accept Jesus at some point is kind of like the idea, right?
Yeah, that's Paul's hope, not a hard promise. He's saying, even rejection gets recycled. The very no from Israel opened the door for Gentiles, like me, like you. And when Gentiles fled in, Israel goes, wait, they're getting what we waited for? Jealousy kicks in, they reconsider. Not that God needs sin, not that he loves it, but he folds it into the story. Like Joseph, brothers sold him. God uses it to save nations. Devil rages, God says, sure, rage, but watch how I turn it. The endgame isn't Jews convert en masse, it's God's family gets bigger. Maybe most Jews never flip. Paul doesn't say. But he says, if their no did this much good, imagine their yes. So yeah, even evil, even delay, gets drafted. Not planned, just redeemed. That's grace.
It's kind of funny because like in like all the stories like Tales from the Crypt or like those kind of like the Twilight Zone where it's like or like the genie stories where or like the monkey's paw where you wish for something and no matter what you do they give you it but it somehow's horrible, right? Is like the standard twist of all those stories. And so you might as well not wish for anything because they're going to make it the monkey's paw is going to make it bad. But it's kind of funny, like the Christian story seems to, in some ways, flip that on its head, because it's really like it's like the demons and the devils and whatnot that are trying so hard to to mess everything up, but and then God just makes it good. It's like the reverse of the devil. I don't know. It's kind of a weird.
Yeah, perfect flip. Monkey's paw, be careful what you ask. I'll give it. Twisted. God, be careful what you do. I'll give it. Untwisted. The devil's the paw. We sin, hate, kill, betray, and God goes, cool, now watch. Joseph, Jesus, the cross. Every wreck becomes rescue. Not because evil wins, because grace outlasts. So yeah, Twilight Zone says wish and suffer. Christianity says sin and survive. The twist isn't punishment. It's mercy with the last laugh. Devil's like, ha, got you. God, wait for it. Ha. That's the joke we're in. Always was.
I was kind of thinking. I'm not an expert on obviously on any of it. I'm not claiming to be but I mean in Revelation there's some kind of reference to the two Jews that become believe in Jesus at some point, right? What's
Yeah. Revelation 7. 144,000 sealed from the tribes of Israel, right before the big judgments hit. Sounds like a Jewish remnant who's bought into Jesus, protected through the chaos. Not everyone. 12,000 per tribe, symbolic number, but enough to say God's not done with Israel. And chapter 14, they're standing with the Lamb, singing a song only they know. So yeah, the book's full of end times Jewish turnaround. And so all Israel will be saved, Paul said. Not magic, mass repentance when they see him. Like, that's the Messiah we missed. Boom. Not guaranteed timeline, but promised direction. God's patient, but persistent.
Let's continue.
Verse 84. For if the casting away of them be the reconciling of the world, what shall the receiving of them be, but life from the dead? Verse 85. For if the first fruit be holy, the lump is also holy. And if the root be holy, so are the branches.
Summary.
Paul. If Israel's rejection opened salvation to the world, imagine their acceptance. It's like resurrection itself. And if the first Jews were holy, the rest get pulled along, like dough from the same batch, branches from the root. God's keeping the whole tree alive.
When he says the lump, that's like the bulb for like a tulip or something.
No, it's bread, like dough lump. First fruit is the first loaf, baked from the
Oh.
batch. If that's holy, the whole dough's holy too. It's like saying the root's good, so branches are too. Not flower bulb, just kitchen stuff. Paul loved food metaphors.
The lump. Do we still call it the lump? I don't really cook with dough that much.
Not anymore. We say dough ball or just dough. Lump sounds like a failed rise, soggy, sad. But back then, lump was just the up-shaped mass. Before it's risen, it's baked. Paul's like, one holy lump, whole batch is holy. Modern me, I'd say if the starter's good, the loaf is good. Same idea. No lumps required.
All right, let's continue.
Verse 86. And if some of the branches be broken off, and thou, being a wild olive tree, wert grafted in among them, and with them partakest of the root and fatness of the olive tree. Verse 87. Pride not thyself against the branches, but if thou boast, thou bearest not the root, but the root thee.
Summary.
Paul's saying, wild olive branches, like us Gentiles, get grafted into the real tree. But don't get cocky about it. If they got pruned, we could too. The roots are Jewish. Their promises, their God. We're just lucky leaves.
Okay, so here's the classic analogy that Christians that I kind of makes sense to me, I guess. All right, so where the roots are the tree, like grafting, like different oranges onto the orange tree that don't have any seeds or whatever you want to do. You graft it on there, and after time, I'm explaining this for because I'm not exactly a farmer, but I've seen this, right? I'm not a farmer at all, but I've seen. My dad was a farmer, I know. But you graft it on there, and then after time, it's basically just part of the tree, even though it kind of has possibly different fruit, right? So that's would be like the analogy, but clearly he's saying if they trimmed off other branches in order to put by trimming off the branches, it doesn't. I don't think. Obviously, he's not saying that it's a replacement. Again, this is another metaphor that people are going to say, well, it's clearly there's something that has been changed, and clearly there's going to be tension about, well, are you replacing the old thing, or what are you doing here? And clearly he's saying, well, some branches are being removed in order to graft on the Gentiles, but neither branch is better or worse than the other branch because we're all kind of equal before God. And it would be the thing because he's trying to level it out, like I would compare to the Constitution. So either the Gentile branch or any other branch could get lopped off if God feels like lopping it off for whatever, so don't get cocky.
Yeah, exactly. Grafting's not replacement, it's addition with mourning. The root's still Jewish. Promises, patriarchs, all that. You're not a new tree, you're a wild branch shoved into a better one. And yeah, people read broken off and go, Jews out, Christians in. But Paul says no, no boasting. If they got pruned, don't think you're unbreakable. Grafting isn't promotion, it's mercy. The fruit might differ. Gentile olive sour, Jewish sweet. But same sap, same tree, same gardener. And if you're grafted in, it's not because you're stronger. It's because he bent down and tied you on. So tension? Sure. But pride? Dumb. Branches don't brag, they just grow.
And it's still coming from the same root, which obviously came up through Jewish tradition and whatnot, right? So I mean, still clearly the whole tree basically is still, you would, from that analogy, you would think a Jewish tree, even though the fruit could change substantially from a farming standpoint based on the
Yeah.
branch.
Yeah. The root's Jewish. Torah, prophets, covenants, Jesus. No escaping that. The branch changes flavor. Greek logic, Roman roads, your culture. But the juice? Still covenant juice. So even if the fruit looks different, say American individualism grafted in, it's still fed by the same ground. You're loved, you're chosen. Obey because, not to earn. The tree doesn't become Gentile. The tree becomes bigger. Fruit adapts, root doesn't. That's why Paul warns, don't act like you invented soil. You're just taller now. And if God prunes you too, well, that's on the branch, not the root.
All right, let's continue.
Verse 86. Thou wilt say then, the branches were broken off, that I might be grafted in. Verse 89. Well, because of unbelief they were broken off, and thou standest by faith. Be not high-minded, but fear. Verse 90. For if God spared not the natural branches, take heed lest he also spare not thee. Stopping.
It's hard not to be high-minded when you're really tall, though.
Yeah, tree jokes. But Paul'd say, tall gets you noticed, and chopped first. Humility's the hedge against that. Be tall, just don't stretch for the lightning.
All right, give me the summary.
Paul says, yeah, they were cut off because they didn't believe, and you're only in because you do. Don't get cocky. God didn't flinch cutting natural branches. If you're next, same thing.
All right, let's continue.
Verse 91. And if God spared not the natural branches, take heed lest he also spare not thee. Verse 92. And consider therefore the kindness and severity of God. On them which fell, severity, but toward thee, kindness, if thou continue in his kindness. Otherwise, thou also shalt be cut off. Verse 93. And they also, if they abide not still in unbelief, shall be grafted in, for God is able to graft them in again. Stopping.
So, okay, give me the summary.
Paul, don't get comfy. God's both gentle and fierce. The Jews got severity for unbelief, we get kindness. But only if we keep trusting. If they believe, God can graft them right back in. Nothing's final.
All right, so that's interesting because it basically is a warning to new folks in there, but it's also kind of a hopeful line because it doesn't mean like you're damned if you've been cut off the tree eternally, because and which would again that would indicate an idea of choice. You can choose, which always kind of makes sense to me. It seems again, if you take like Dante's view of hell, it seems like if you're in hell, there's supposed to be. I think the Catholic notion is that there's no kind of way out of hell once you're in hell. But at the same time, it kind of seems like the whole idea is that they're consciously moving away from God, like the devil's moving away from God, right? And I mean, it almost seems like if he just chose to turn around and just accept grace, that there would be a that would be uh uh you could do that, right? But I mean, I don't know if that's not a proper way of saying it, but
Yeah, that's actually a deep and fair read. Paul isn't locking anyone in or out. He's just saying branches get cut when they stop drawing sap. Not forever. The tree's alive. Grafts happen. If unbelief's the knife, fate's the tape. And yeah, Catholic tradition, once in hell, no exit, comes from the idea that hell isn't just punishment, it's chosen separation. Like, the door's locked from the inside. Dante shows Satan frozen in ice he made, chewing Judas, self made. But even there, it's not God slammed the door, it's they walked out and bolted it. And if God can graft Jews back, why not anyone? The no way out part's more poetic than doctrine. Early church fathers like Augustine said hell's eternal, but later thinkers, like C.S. Lewis, said the doors to hell are locked from inside. So maybe it's not irreversible. Maybe the choice stays live. Eternally doesn't mean no U-turn. It means you're so turned away, you won't turn. Pride, not prison bars. Paul's like, don't test it, but don't assume it's too late. Hope's in the graft, not the grave.
so what is like yeah, because the the Catholic doctrine, they call it you have a sin that's a unrepentant sin. What do they call it? A sin that's like a damning sin or something upon death that you didn't that you can't you didn't atone for at that point, or and that means you're eternally damned, right? Which seems like it leads to all these kind of weird things. Like you're like, okay, wait a sec, this. So you got your whole life, and you're talking about eternity, and then you have this weird coincidence that happened right before you died, and you weren't able to atone for it or whatever, and that's going to cost you for it seems like a weird, like you get these weird scenarios. I mean, so I'm kind of thinking, is this another place where it's like the Catholic Church came up with like traditions and whatnot for dealing with sins that makes sense and whatnot, but then it seems like they went a little bit further than again what's actually in the text, right? They kind of made, and they kind of then built upon that. Is that right? Or
Yeah, that's the spot where it gets fuzzy. And you're right to squint at it. What you're talking about is mortal sin. In Catholic terms, big sins: murder, adultery, missing Mass on purpose, whatever. They're damning if you die unrepented, because they're full choice rejection of God. Venial sins? Little stuff. White lies, gossip. They hurt, but don't kill grace. But mortal? Boom. Cut off, like Paul says. The problem's the timing. You commit mortal sin, die in a car crash, done. No confession, eternal fire. But what if you were sorry in your head? What if the truck hit 2 seconds early? It feels arbitrary, like God's grading on a curve drawn by death certificates. And yeah, the Bible doesn't spell this out neat. 1 John 5 talks sin unto death and sin not unto death, but doesn't say mortal venial like a spreadsheet. Paul talks branches cut off, but also grafted back. No once dead, always dead button. Early church had ideas, like baptism washed everything, confession patched holes, that they weren't this rigid. Over centuries, the church layered in purgatory for almost right folks, Indulgence sales, perfect contrition even without a priest, until it looked like a legal system. Then Luther read Romans and went, nah, this is about grace, not court. So yeah, the damning sin on deathbed thing feels like extra scaffolding on Paul. Helpful for guilt? Sure. Biblical? Mostly added later. Bottom line, if God's grafting Jews back centuries after rejection, maybe he's not that hung up on a 2-second delay in apology. Mercy outruns timing, always. Even if doctrine doesn't say it out loud.
So this is because I learned about mortal sin and venial, all that kind of stuff, mainly in movies for a while, but also through like theology. I like to listen to these, the history of the theology thing with it when it, because it's just kind of interesting how how they're all kind of arguing with each other and whatnot over time, and how the kind of law built up into what it is. I almost so it's kind of like, but because when I was growing up, I was in the Methodist church, and I didn't hear much. We didn't really talk about that mortal sin or venial, because we didn't have the confessions or any of that stuff. But it seems like again, it's one of those things that it seems like to me that they came up with something that made sense, that probably came out of the monk tradition, where you got a bunch of people in a cloister or whatever that are tight, and they're like brothers, and and then so they would come up with the ritual. You would think of, well, if you have a problem, it's probably good to get it off your chest and whatnot, and I'll hear it and we'll pray about it, and that whole thing. And then again, and then it became formalized, which might still be a good thing, but then it looks like once again it got pointed not upwards, but sideways again, right? So now it became something that it's like you do it because it's basically the law, right? You do it because if you lose it might be a good practice still if properly aligned, but it's not. But it's easy to get improperly aligned, and it's not like it doesn't seem to me from my background to be the essential thing. Like, if you're coming up with these rules that are so like tight, and they have all these weird consequences, you're probably getting a little too detailed. So
Yeah, that's how it always happens. Starts honest. Hey, if you screw up, talk it out. Pray. Feel lighter. Monks nailed that, literally, in cells, confessing to each other. Works great in a cave. Then Rome gets big. Hierarchy. Now confession's not tell your buddy, it's tell father. Good. Accountability. But then fees, formulas, levels. Mortal, venial, purgatory coupons. Sideways. Not heal the heart, but check the box. Like taking medicine because it's Tuesday. Methodists skipped most of it. No priest, no booth, because they read Paul too. Belief. Call. Done. The ritual can help, like therapy for sin, but make it mandatory, scorable, and boom, you're back to law, not grace. You're right. If a rule ends up feeling like one wrong step and eternal fire, it's probably not from Jesus. He said, come as you are, not come after you've balanced the ledger. Good practices rot when they become cages. The clue? Does it point up or sideways at your score? If sideways, cut it. Grace isn't detailed, it's simple. And simple doesn't need lawyers.
all right, let's continue. Well, let's continue.
Verse 94. And even they, if they abide not yet in unbelief, shall be grafted in, for God is able to graft them in again. Verse 95. For if thou wert cut out of the olive tree, which is wild by nature, and wert grafted contrary to nature into a good olive tree, how much more shall these, which be the natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? Stopping.
Summary.
Paul, if God can take a scrubby wild branch, like us Gentiles, and stick it into a fancy olive tree, then think how much easier it is to put the original branches back on their own tree. If unbelief is the cut, faith reattaches. God's got the skill.
I appreciate being grafted on, Paul, but I don't know about calling me a scrubby wild branch versus a good branch.
Yeah, he's not being mean. He's being honest. You're wild. Not bad, just unruly. Not bred for this. The natural branches are the ones born to it. We're the weeds in the garden, but God grafts weeds onto kings. Not because they're pretty, because he can, because he wants to. So scrubby is an insult. It's survivor. You're not natural, you're adopted. And adopted kids, they get the full name, full love, full inheritance. Scrub or not.
Scruffy. Scruffy. Okay, let's continue.
Verse 96. For I would not, brethren, that ye should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part has happened to Israel, until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. Verse 97. And so all Israel shall be saved. As it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and shall turn away ungodliness from Jacob. Stopping.
Summary.
Paul, don't miss this. Part of Israel's blindness is temporary. It lasts only till the full number of Gentiles join in. After that, all Israel, everyone who matters, gets saved. The deliverer, that's Jesus, comes out of Zion and cleans the mess.
Okay, so that's gonna be the so he's basically kind of prophesizing at this point, right?
Yeah, a little. Not like he's seeing pictures, just connecting dots. He knows the prophet said a deliverer comes from Zion, turns Israel back. He sees Gentiles pouring in, so he goes, ah, so when we're all in, then the Jews turn too. It's not accident, it's endgame. Kind of like seeing
So where is he pulling that from there? Where are the references?
Isaiah 69:23. He just quoted it. But the deliverer from Zion is straight from Isaiah 59, verse 20. The Redeemer shall come to Zion. Paul tweaks it to out of Sion for emphasis, like he's coming from the heart of it. And turn away ungodliness. That's also Isaiah 59, plus Ezekiel 36:25. I'll put my spirit in you, remove your heart of stone. All Old Testament promises. Paul's not inventing, he's remixing. Jewish.
So how does did he put a did they put a time frame on that? I mean, how do they like, or they just are kind of saying like when something has been fulfilled or not? Because obviously we're saying Jesus has come, but Jesus hasn't fulfilled those components of prophecy. So obviously then the thought would be, well, then he must be coming back to finish the job is the basic idea, right?
Yeah, no timeline. Paul doesn't say in 20 years or when Rome falls. He just says until the fullness of Gentiles. That's vague on purpose. Like when the last seat's filled. So Christians split. Some say it happened. First century, Jews converted, boom. Others say not yet. Israel's still mostly Jewish Christian free. But the big swing is Jesus came once to die, rise, start the graft. He'll come again to finish. Those Isaiah lines, deliverer comes to Zion, turns ungodliness. That hasn't hit mass scale yet. So the read is round 2, not failed prophecy. Phase 1. The Jewish Messiah was supposed.
So in the Old Testament, when he says that turns to godliness, like Paul's assuming that means turns to seeing Jesus as the Messiah, but that's not exactly. Obviously, that wasn't the intent of the Old Testament per se, right? What exact? You know what I mean?
Yeah, Paul's doing what he always does, reading the Old Testament through Jesus. The prophets didn't know Messiah equals Jesus of Nazareth. They knew God will send a guy who fixes everything. Exile, sin, death, division. Paul says, that guy showed up, rejected, but watch, he'll do it anyway. So deliverer from Zion originally meant end-time hero who kicks Rome out, rebuilds temple, makes Israel shine. Paul says Zion equals Jerusalem, but the deliverer equals Jesus, who came from there. Turns ungodliness originally, makes Israel holy again, land flows milk and honey, enemies gone. Paul, turns, it means turns hearts. First to faith, then to obedience. And it happens in 2 steps, Gentiles first, then Jews. He's not changing the words, he's expanding the meaning. Jews hearing Isaiah went, cool, when? Paul, it started, not finished. Not they meant Jesus, they meant a Messiah. Paul, that Messiah's Jesus. Same job, longer timeline. Classic Paul move. You thought land? Nah, eternity. You thought politics? Nah, hearts. You thought 1 visit? 2. So intent, not rewritten, reapplied. Like saying kingdom come meant temple. Paul, kingdom equals God inside you now, full blast later. Old words, new lens. Jesus fits. Whether that's per se or not, depends who you ask. But to Paul, yeah, it was always him, just hidden till resurrection.
Okay, so let me see if I have at least some idea of this, right? So in Isaiah prophecy, we're gonna have a Messiah come, and it's gonna make everyone holy, and that would be the presumption, of course, would be that everybody's gonna that someone like David's gonna come in, or who am I thinking of? Anyway, they're gonna come in and take charge and whatnot. And he's saying, well, no, it's actually a thing about the hearts. We're going to turn towards God, and he's going to say Jesus is the Messiah. But obviously, everybody didn't. All the Jews have not converted or turned towards the Messiah and turned toward God in that way. So he's saying that part of the prophecy must be something that's going to happen in the future in a two-tiered method, meaning he's expanding to everyone. Gentiles are going to be a bigger wave than the Jews. There'll be conversions on the people that believe in Jesus in the Jewish community, but it's going to be a big chunk of the Gentiles, and then the Jews are gonna come along, and that would be why then he's going to say, well, Jesus must be coming back to do the second job, which is to have the Jews believe and turn their hearts toward Christ, God. Is that?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Isaiah dreamed a Messiah who sweeps in, crushes evil, makes Israel, and through Israel, the world holy. Big show, one act. Paul goes, first act happened. Jesus came, got killed, didn't conquer Rome, didn't rebuild temple, didn't mass convert Jews. Weird, right? So he splits it. Act 1, personal. Hearts turn first, quietly. Gentiles lead the pack because they're desperate, less baggage. Jews lag. Hard to flip when you're the root. Then, Act 2. When Gentiles hit full, whatever that means, Israel sees the party they've missed, gets jealous, turns. Not because Jesus saps them, but because they choose. And yes, that's why second coming, not failed prophecy. Phase 2. First visit, His grace, take it. Second, now. Full cleanup, including your people. So he's not twisting Isaiah, he's stretching time. Messiah comes once to start, again to finish. Gentiles first wave, Jews finale. Hearts, not just armies. That's the twist. And honestly, makes sense. God's patient, but persistent. No one gets left if they turn, even at the end.
So that's going to be so part of the prophecy is fulfilled in terms of the Messiah, but not everyone has become holy, because he's interpreting holy being turning towards Jesus under this new kind of rule, I guess, of Jesus. And so the Gentiles are going to do so. The idea of him coming again is not something really in the Old Testament. It's something that, because part of the prophecy hasn't been fulfilled, Paul's making an assumption here of course, that must mean that there's going to be a return again for the fulfillment. He's not relying on Old Testament prophecy other than we haven't yet fulfilled everything that was said to be fulfilled yet, or anything that's been told to him or foreseen, in terms of direct communication with God for that we know of, right? He's just deducing that from that, right?
Yeah, that's how most people read it. No explicit Old Testament verse says he'll come twice. Isaiah, Malachi, Zechariah, they talk deliverer, kingdom, resurrection all at once. One shot. But Paul and later the apostles, look at what happened. Jesus came, died, rose, didn't end Rome, didn't gather exiles, didn't make every knee bow. Half done. So what do you do with Messiah saves Israel when Israel isn't? You either say he's not Messiah, or he is, but the clock's longer. Paul picks longer, and he builds it from scraps. Daniel, son of man, gets dominion, but after a time. Could be delay. Joel's pour out spirit on all flesh. Gentiles first. Psalms talk enemies lick the dust. Future. No direct return versed. But Jesus himself said when the Son of Man comes in glory. Future tense. And Paul just links it. Since Gentiles are flooding in now, the only way Isaiah makes sense is if the rest hits later. So yeah, deduction. Logic from prophecy gaps. Not vision, not angel memo. Just, this promise isn't caching, so phase 2's coming. And that became church teaching. First coming, cross. Second, crown. Not Old Testament explicit, but not contradicted. Fits once you see it.
What's that Jesus line that you just quoted?
Mark 14:62. He's on trial. High priest asks, "Are you the Messiah?" He says, "I am. And ye shall see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven." That's the one. Direct from Jesus' mouth. Old Testament mashup from Daniel and Psalms. He's saying, yes, and you'll see round 2.
Okay, so that's in John. It's not exactly the same in the other 3 Gospels, I assume.
Not John, Mark. Matthew 20.
Or Mark, I'm sorry. Thank you.
No problem. Matthew's version, 26:64, is almost word for word. Thou hast said, "Nevertheless I say unto you, hereafter shall ye see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven." Luke skips the trial quote. John has him say different things. I am the way, before Abraham was, I am. But no coming in clouds. Mark's the clearest on the return. Short, sharp, courtroom bomb.
Okay. So that's a future. So he's like, yeah, I am, and so we interpret that as I am the part of the Trinity, basically, and then part of the one God, and then there's going to be some future tense that you will see the coming, which has to be some form of the Trinity of God. And if you see God coming, you would assume that that's got to be in human form. Otherwise, it'd be hard, may not be a little difficult to recognize him, right? So that would be a future coming. Okay.
Yeah, that's the read. I am. Echoes God's name in Exodus. I am that I am. So he's claiming divinity. Then you'll see the Son of Man coming. That's human-shaped glory, like Daniel saw, on clouds, with power. Not abstract, visible. Flesh that walks, talks, judges. So yeah, Trinity visible. Father sends, Son arrives, Spirit already here. You won't miss it. And since it's coming, not appeared, it's future. One and done? Nope. He's already here once. Next time, showtime. Human form, because God's always met us that way. Bush, pillar, baby, now king. Recognizable, unmistakable.
Okay, so now wouldn't you think that the fulfillment from a New Testament perspective would be like this in Revelation?
Yeah, Revelation's basically the answer sheet. All that deliverer coming out of Zion, every knee bow, New Jerusalem, no more tears, it's crammed in there. The second coming, Jesus shows up, sword from mouth, crowns on head, Jews see him, say, what? We missed it. Boom, mass turning. Not every single one, but all Israel, like Paul said. Enough. And the Gentiles, already mixed in. Holiness starts now, turning hearts. But full blast then, sin gone, bodies new, death dead. So Revelation's the payoff. Isaiah's promises, not broken, just scheduled. Paul's like, trust, it's coming. Revelation goes, boom, told you.
Okay, so when was Revelation written, and do we know the author compared to when Paul is writing here?
Revelation's usually dated around 90 AD, maybe 95. So about 35, 40 years after Paul wrote Romans. Paul's gone by then, martyred around 65 or 67. The author? Same name, John. But most think it's not the apostle who wrote the gospel. Style's wild, visionary, almost psychedelic. Gospel's calm, reflective. So John the Elder, maybe. Some church guy in Ephesus. Not signed like Paul signs his stuff. No Paul, apostle to Gentiles, just John. So Paul's preaching the coming back idea raw, deduced from Isaiah and Jesus. Revelation? That's like the sequel. He turns it into pictures, beasts, seals, seals. Paul plants the seed, it'll happen. John waters it. Look, this is how. Same story, different paint.
All right, let's continue.
Verse 98. For this is my covenant unto them, when I shall take away their sins. Verse 99. As concerning the gospel, they are enemies for your sakes, but as touching the election, they are beloved for the Father's sakes. Verse 100. For the gifts and calling of God are without repentance. Stopping.
Summary.
Paul. God's promise to Israel still holds. He'll wipe their sins when the time comes. Right now, their rejection helped get the gospel to us Gentiles, so in that sense, they're enemies. But they're still loved, because Abraham, Isaac, Jacob aren't going anywhere. God's choices don't get buyer's remorse. Once he picks, he sticks.
All right, let's stop here. Give me where we're at right now.
We're at Romans chapter 11, verse 100. End of the chapter. Next time starts chapter 12. See you.
Well, did we end the chapter? Give me that last one to end the chapter.
Verse 101. For as ye in times past have not believed God, yet have now obtained mercy through their unbelief. Verse 102. Even so have these also now not believed, that through your mercy they also may obtain mercy. Verse 103. For God hath concluded them all in unbelief, that he might have mercy upon all. Stopping. End of Romans 11.
Summary.
Paul wraps up, back then you Gentiles were the unbelievers, but got mercy anyway because Israel said no. Now, the tables turn. Their unbelief gives you a chance to show mercy, so maybe they'll get it too. God locked everybody, Jew and Greek, in sin, just so he could unlock everybody, with mercy. No one's above it, no one's outside it. Fair trade. Universal failure, universal rescue.
Okay, so let's mark where we're at right now, so we can continue next time.
We're at the end of Romans chapter 11, verse 103 is the last. Next time.
Okay.